Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another lecture put on by the University of the West Indies Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My name is Marlon Anton James, and I'll be serving as your chairperson this evening. Before I continue, though, let's put our hands together for the Kalunga Theatre Collective, by whom you are welcome. You are entertained on your way in. They are a homegrown contemporary performing arts movement rooted in and embracing the dramatic heritages of Afro-Vincentian and Caribbean people. And we thank them for setting the tone of this evening's event. Now, I invite you to stand as we officially begin with a prayer done by Sharon Garway, the marketing assistant acting right here at the UWI Global Campus SVG. And I ask that you remain standing for the national anthem that will follow. Sharon?
Micah 6 and verse 8, New International Version. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, what the Lord requires of you, to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you humbly. We thank you for this institution called the UWI Global Campus, the University of the West Indies. We thank you for this gathering here today and for the ability to celebrate our identity. Lord, we thank you for our culture. We thank you for our heritage. And Lord, we thank you that we can celebrate Black History Month in a place free and democratic. We take none of this for granted, Lord. We pray for this event this evening. Anything coming against it, in word, thought, or deed, we cast it down. We thank you, Lord, for everything that is going to be happening here today. This rich food that we'll be getting from Dr. Henderson Carter. Thank you for his coming, Lord. We thank you for the head, the staff of the UWI Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we pray that everything once again goes well and we have a safe journey home as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And now the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Please be seated, everyone. At this time, I acknowledge the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Ashel Morgan, Speaker of the OECS House of Assembly, the Honorable Rene Batiste, Head of the Diplomatic Mission of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, His Excellency Francisco Perez Santana. Head of Site of the University of the West Indies Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Risa Noel McBarnett. Our distinguished guest lecturer this evening, who is a senior lecturer in history in the Department of History, Philosophy, and Psychology at the UWI Cave Hill campus, Dr. Henderson Carter. Lecturer in the same department at UWI Cave Hill campus, Dr. Cleve Scott. Representatives of the UWI Guild of Students, the SVG chapter. I see the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Anthony Regisford. Chief Technical Officer of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, Mrs. Zoila Ellis Brown. Other specially invited guests, members of the media, viewers online. It's really my pleasure to serve as chairperson of this evening's lecture, and I warmly welcome you as we commemorate Black History Month. Speaking of Black History Month, tonight's lecture explores a very crucial theme, which is elevating Black history for nation building and development. So we'll delve into two pivotal questions. The first, why must we elevate Black history for nation building and development? And two, how can development and nation building be achieved? I encourage you to engage critically with these questions throughout our guest speaker's presentation, and you can do so by taking notes, by reflecting on your own perspectives, and by participating freely in our discussion. Following Dr. Carter's presentation, there will be a question and answer session, during which time you can share your thoughts and ask your questions. So once again, welcome and thank you very much for joining us this evening. We continue with the program now, and it's my pleasure to invite to say a few words the head of site of UWI Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Risa Noel McBarnett. Please welcome as she comes.
Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Ashel Morgan. Speaker of the OECS House of Assembly, Ms. Rene Batiste. Members of the diplomatic community, including the head of the diplomatic mission of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in SVG, His Excellency Francisco Perez Santana and Mrs. Santana. Members of the civil service, representatives from the University of the West Indies, including our distinguished guest, senior lecturer in history from the Department of History and Philosophy, the UWI Cave Hill campus, Dr. Henderson Carter, Dr. Cleve Scott, lecturer from the Department of History and Philosophy at the UWI Cave Hill campus, representatives of the UWI Guild of Students, SVG chapter, members of the business community, including the CEO of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Anthony Regisford, members of education institutions and civic organizations, other specially invited guests, members of the media, everyone, all of you, present and those viewing online, I extend a warm welcome to everyone. I am elated and honored that you have taken time from your weekend to be here with us. I am sure you are pondering, why has the University of the West Indies Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines set about to commemorate Black History Month? Please permit me a few minutes to explain how we got here. I assumed the role of head of site on the 1st of October 2024. Shortly thereafter, we curated our calendar of activities for 2025, which merged long-standing activities with new ones. And I wish to acknowledge my predecessors, namely Mrs. Deborah Dalrymple and Dr. Adrian Fraser. They're both here tonight, whose work I am able to build on. As a new activity, a member of staff proposed the idea of celebrating Black History Month with a lecture. So tonight's lecture is a manifestation of an idea emanating from within our team. 3 things were clear. We agreed that the celebration of Black history should not be contained within the 28 days of February, but that the month of February gives us another opportunity to celebrate the diversity and achievements of Black people in the Caribbean. Secondly, Black History Month helps to raise awareness of the connections between Caribbean people and African Americans in the United States. Notable Caribbean figures helped to break barriers and transform United States history and culture. People like Marcus Garvey. They were either immigrants from or children of immigrants from the Caribbean region. 3, the University of the West Indies has been part of regional building. West Indies Cricket, the University of the West Indies, the Federation of the West Indies, and a host of other institutions were driving forces of subverting colonial hegemony, some people say hegemony, in the Caribbean region. The UWI outlasted most of these institutions and has contributed to Caribbean development and nation building. While it is widely known that the concept of Black History Month has its roots in the United States of America, it has been observed that the month-long celebration has been embraced by the Black diaspora and most notably in the Caribbean. With this in mind, we considered why celebrate Black History Month in the Caribbean. I am pleased that Dr. Henderson Carter accepted our invitation. He will speak on the topic, Elevating Black History for Nation Building and Development. This is Dr. Carter's first visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so give him a round of applause, please. Give him a warm Vincy welcome. And besides being an esteemed lecturer in history and also an author, Dr. Carter is a trained tour guide. I am certain that he enjoyed the visits to a few of our tourism sites earlier today. While we focus on this evening's lecture, I would like for us to keep in mind our upcoming 3-part lecture series titled The Politics and Poetics of the Spiritual Baptists in commemoration of the National Spiritual Baptist Holiday. That's on May 21st. We have collaborated with esteemed historians, Dr. Cleve Scott, who's in the audience, Dr. Gary Michael Denny, who is following online, and Dr. Adrian Fraser, who is also in the audience, to present 3 lectures in 3 different locations, namely Calder, right here in Kingston at our site, and Rose Hall. The first lecture will be delivered by esteemed Vincentian historian and UWI alum, Dr. Gary Michael Denny, on Thursday, the 6th of March, from 7 p.m. at the Calder Primary School. Please mark your calendars, and we look forward to your support. There are also plans in the pipeline to collaborate with local, cultural, and creative professionals across diverse artistic disciplines to elevate our plans to commemorate National Spiritual Baptist Day in SVG. However, I won't let the cat out of the bag just yet. In addition, there is the upcoming 12th International Garifuna Conference, which will be held from the 11th to the 13th of March, right here at the UWI Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We will continue to keep everyone abreast of all upcoming events for 2025. I would like the public to know that you do not have to be an academic or hold a university degree to hold space, as the creatives say, or to learn or to participate in our events, such as our lecture this evening. There are no limits to learning, to unlearning, or relearning. Please feel free to reach out to me. I welcome your suggestions on how we at the University of the West Indies Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines can foster greater connections with you, our people, our communities, and our local UWI alumni. Turning our attention back to our lecture this evening, we aim to provide an enriching experience for you through academic discourse by Dr. Henderson Carter, our decor by EMS Creations, and creative and cultural expressions by the La Gracia Dance Theatre Inc. and the Kalunga Theatre Collective. Thank you all for your support, and please enjoy our program. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noel McBarnett, for, first of all, setting the context for this evening's lecture and for giving us some insight as to what the University of the West Indies Global Campus in Vincent and Grenadines has in store in terms of upcoming activities and so on. We move on now with the program. We have a presentation from La Gracia Dance Company. It's a dance troupe that is based in Lomans Hill. That's on the leeward side of the island. They come from a membership of over 100, but we have just a few of them this evening, and they made their grand debut on the 1st of August 2002 at a national independence rally hosted by the Ministry of Culture, which means that they've been around for over 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for La Gracia Dance Company.
This poem shall speak of the wretched sea that worships these shores, of mothers crying for their young swallowed up by the sea. This poem shall say nothing new. This poem shall speak of time, time unlimited, time undefined. Yes, this poem is a drum, Ashanti, Ma, Igbo, Yoruba, Nyabingi warriors, Yohuro, Namibia, Yohuro Soweto, Yohuro Africa. This poem is to be continued in your mind, 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 in your mind.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine, we're salvation. And I fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. And I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone. And I just might fail, but Lord knows I'll try. Just as fill up the sky. Stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. I hear freedom calling, calling me to answer. Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Stand Up, as presented by La Gracia Dance Company. And I know that you, like me, were reminded of the resilience and the courage that defines Black history. I think the dance really embodied the strength and the perseverance that have shaped our collective journey. Thank you so much to La Gracia Dance Company. Another round of applause for La Gracia. As we move closer to the guest lecture, just before we have Dr. Carter come, we'll have an introduction, which will be done by Dr. Cleve Scott, who is a lecturer in the Department of Philosophy, History, Philosophy, and Psychology at the UWI campus. He's also he's a historian, cultural critic, music producer, and development specialist. He's also one of the authors of the recently government-commissioned History of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to be published in 2 volumes. So at this time, I invite Dr. Scott to introduce Dr. Henderson Carter. Please welcome Mr. Scott.
Good evening. First of all, I would like everyone to stand for a moment. We have just lost 5 distinguished historians, one after the other, all associated with the University of the West Indies and also the Keyville campus. Henderson, we better make sure we take our medication. We want to remember Professor Pedro Welch, who just died yesterday. Before him, Trevor Marshall, who wrote that famous article claiming that Pan Calypso started in Barbados. Professor Soroy Auger, The Making of the West Indies, which I'm sure all of us use in secondary school. Dr. Carl Watson, who walked the length and breadth of this country many times. I myself with him as a student. And finally, Sir Keith Hunt. Sir Keith Hunt was a principal, and Professor Welch was a vice principal. Thank you, please sit. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce Dr. Henderson Carter, who I have known for almost 30 years. Dr. Carter started his career, as far as I know, he may correct me later on, as a school teacher, teaching in the secondary schools, teaching history. He later enrolled in the University of the West Indies Cable campus, where he pursued his first degree in history. And he later entered into the Masters of Philosophy program. While he was doing his MA program, MPhil program, I was an undergraduate. And I had the pleasure of sharing the halls with him and another colleague, Dr. David Brown, and getting to learn about something called, I can't remember the term, but it's a book by E.P. Thompson, and how working class people are influenced by their conditions to make decisions, what Thompson calls the moral economy. Like Dr. Carter, I was taught by Professor Beckles, and I quickly learned from Professor Beckles that it was Dr. Carter who found perhaps the most important historical evidence in the historical writing of Barbados. Professor Beckles had written and argued that the 1816 Bossa Rebellion was led by Bossa. Up until then, most historians argued that the revolt was not led by Bossa. And Dr. Carter found that critical piece of evidence that shamed so many historians from across the world who insisted that it could not be Bossa. And soon after that, Professor Beckles put Dr. Carter into what you call the Resistance Studies Group, along with Dr. David Brown. And some people say he took me in that too, because the funny thing is, the title and scope of Dr. Carter's thesis, which is on resistance and protests, is the same thing that I did also in my PhD. So instead, in addition to being a teacher and undertaking his undergraduate and postgraduate work, he is a cricketer. While I was at Cable, I stayed away from cricket because Professor Beckles played cricket, and he was not going to tell me bowl spin at him. I was a pace bowler. But good thing Dr. Carter was a batsman, so he had to face up to Professor Beckles' bowling. He's married. He has children. 2 children, right? A daughter and a son. And the daughter is working in Antigua now with a major international organization. I could tell you that when we go to lunch in the SCR, Dr. Carter always calls for turkey. So I know he loves turkey. But at dinner last night with Dr. McBarnett, he called for chicken. He's a tour guide. And earlier today, Dr. McBarnett gave him a tour of this facility. We took him around Kingston to Fort Charlotte, which is, most of you know, is closed, but we climbed the hill and peeped over. He went through Rockies, and he went to look for his family. You know all the way his family is? Dash the hill, man, come on. You all not Vincentians? Dusher Hill Bajans, the Redlegs, the Eki-Beckis of Barbados, who moved here towards the late 19th century. So, he has a BA in history, which he gained in 1987. He has an MPhil in history, which he gained in 1993. And he has a PhD in history, which he gained in 2000. Now, if you look behind my name, you would see Cleve Scott, BA, PhD. Because I took the shortcut. Dr. Carter, he took the long road. That's why he have MPhil. I don't know. Real enthusiasm in history. In other words, he studied very long to get to his PhD. Very often my students ask me, how come you don't have masters behind your name? And I have to explain that to them. And it means that he really loved this. In addition, in the university system, you have to study to teach. And he has what they call the certificate in university teaching and learning. And that's mainly for people who didn't go to the teacher's college. Right, Dr. Carter? All right. Fortunately, I went to the teacher's college. He is a member of the Association of Caribbean Historians, ACH, a long-standing member. This is an organization that brings together historians from all over the world that study the region. Currently, he is the producer of a radio program on the Voice of Barbados called Today in Bajan History. It comes every day, and it's a calendar. Later on, there's a book that he published recently. We're going to present it to all of the repositories here. He's also the producer of another radio program called Today in Cricket History. And I don't like that one because every night he calls me in the middle of the night and tells me I have to write the one for the next day. He was the chair of the 60th anniversary committee of the Cavell campus. Cavell, we celebrated our 60th anniversary 3 years ago or 2 years ago? Last year? 2 years ago. He was the chair of the 50th anniversary committee of the Department of History at Cavell. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. He was the head of department from 2018 to 2024. And during that period, he worked me, I want to use the Vincentian terminology, he worked me very hard. Because at the time, the department, we were going through a major decline in everything, in student intake, in the publicity, and he worked very hard to build it up, and now he has passed it on to Dr. Rodney Worrell. He specializes in the research on rum, and I like to give this joke. He likes to write about rum, but he doesn't drink rum. Because he is a member of the Church of Nazarene, and he also preaches on Sunday mornings from time to time. Among his publications are From Invitation to Deportation, 70 Years of the Windrush Generation, Shaping a Nation, Principles of Barbados Schools, Business in BIM. Business in BIM. He didn't say Barbados because I don't know why, I never asked him why. Business in BIM, which looks at the development of businesses in Barbados. And he has done a lot of work with the business community. He has lectured to the Barbados Small Business Association. He recently facilitated a book by the Bajan businessman Ralph B.C. Williams of Williams Industries, one of the biggest companies in Barbados. It's called Working to Build a Stronger Nation. He also wrote for the Barbados Light and Power, the equivalent to a VINLEC. It's called Powering Our Nation's Progress. His major work, his thesis, which I told about the Resistance School, is called Labor Pains, Resistance and Protest in Barbados. And in it, you could read about the potato riots. You would read about the 1876 Confederation riots, when they wanted to put St. Vincent together on the Barbados. And the white community told the blacks that slavery is going to come back, and they had a riot. And so this riot gave us a word in Barbados called federation. And in federation in Barbados means trouble. So they said, don't go down there like federation. Recently, essays in honor of Elsa Govaya, Interrogating Injustices, which is one of the latest book. In this book, there's an article by myself and the Honorable Prime Minister who has an article in it. And finally, Today in Bajan History with Professor Alan Cobley. As you can see, Dr. Carter is indeed a prolific historian, not only in writing, but in public appearances and so on. And if you come to Barbados, he would take you to a place called Magnetic Hill, where if you put your car in neutral, you cannot go forward or backward. Please give a warm welcome to my friend, colleague, Dr. Henderson Carter.
And good night, everyone. Madam Chair, Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Ashal Morgan, Speaker of the OECS Assembly, Ms. Renee Baptiste, Head of the Diplomatic Mission of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in SVG, Francisco Perez Santana and Mrs. Santana, members of the civil service, UWI representatives, head of site, UWI Global Campus SVG, Dr. Risa Noel Barnett, Dr. Cleve Scott, lecturer in history at the UWI Capel campus, representatives of the UWI Guild of Students SVG chapter, chairperson of the UWI Alumni Association SGV chapter, members of the business community, including Mr. Anthony Regisford, members of education institutions and civic organizations, other specially invited guests, members of the media, all our guests present or viewing online, a pleasant good evening. It is indeed a wonderful privilege to be here for the first time, and I'm really enjoying St. Vincent and the Grenadines, really enjoying the views, enjoying the food, enjoying the rides, and Dougie, or Douglas, and Cleve, and Risa took me various places, and they intend to continue this tour tomorrow morning. So we got to be short so that we can get out of here, get some rest, and come back tomorrow morning. But I really enjoyed the tour this morning, and it was really an eye-opener. And it helped me to prepare for my lecture. Also helping me to prepare for my lecture is one of my students from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Kieran Brown, who's a final year student. I hope he's listening online. He's a final year student in econ and history. And I quizzed him, interviewed him, asked him about St. Vincent and businessmen and business persons, etc., and he obliged. I also read a few texts, including The Making of the Comrade. I found that text very exciting indeed, and I'll say a bit more about it. To prepare for a lecture that is entitled Elevating Black History and Nation Building. So we're looking at Black history for nation building and development. You know, for hundreds of years in the colonial era, the experience of the Black people was suppressed. Instead, the experience and the culture of the colonizers reigned supreme. So, for example, in the Caribbean, we had something called, could somebody come and stabilize this mic for me? We had something called Empire Day, where people celebrated Empire Day in May. Then there was the Queen's birthday, Trafalgar Day, October. And we celebrated those initiatives, those celebrations. School children came out when the Queen came down, all in their hats, lined the streets. So the colonial era was about celebrating the colony, celebrating the colonial masters, but not the blacks. Now in 1926, the American historian Carter G. Woodson, in a deeply segregated America, thank you very much. Wonderful. If you don't have horse, you ride cow. But Carter G. Woodson, in a deeply segregated America, pushed the idea of a week celebration of Black history and achievement, 1 week. And President Ford pushed the idea of extending the celebration to 1 month. Now, in the last few decades, Caribbean states have also been celebrating Black history. Yet there's some people who argue that such a celebration is not necessary in countries that are predominantly Black. I think, however, that this celebration is necessary and vital for people whose history and heritage have been suppressed under the weight of over 300 years of colonial rule. Our Black countries have a history of racial and colonial domination, and our Black achievements are suppressed. For example, I'm not sure that we have identified the Black workers who worked at Black Point Tunnel. We say just workers, but who are these workers? And that's a way to suppress the achievement of Black people. I'm not sure we have identified either those Black workers at Fort Charlotte, or the people who built the cathedrals and the churches. And that is important because in my country, we have a church called St. John's Parish Church, the showpiece of the planter community. This church was blown down in 1831, but rebuilt by an enslaved man, called Adam Straw Waterman. And you know you would not find his name anywhere on any plaque around the church. That is how you suppress culture. That is how you suppress achievement. He also went on to build several factories, but this time in one of the factories, he penned his name A.S. Waterman. Nobody can remove that. The point I'm making here is that we have to look for our Black people, our Black artists, our Black masons, our Black carpenters, our Black builders. We have to find them. But I hope Dr. Scott and his colleagues are finding these people in that 3-volume project that is being undertaken at this moment. Now, my thesis is that we must promote Black history as a tool for nation building and development. By promotion, I mean not only to wear the African dress, but be always conscious of our heritage and to honor the achievements and the accomplishments of our stalwarts and to engender pride in Black heritage. But what is the relationship between history and development, between history and nation building? Knowledge of the past is powerful. It's a powerful tool that can guide policy, planning, and programs. You know, this is why the United States has set up an office called the Office of the Historian. And you know what that's to do? To research issues, to give responses to congressmen, and of course, the executive. And I hope that that office is very active at this stage in American history. But it's important for people to go back in the past to find out what happened and how those policies of the past can guide us today and into the future. So we in the region must see history as a tool for personal development, for village advancement, for community advancement, and national progress. But what about nation building? Sometimes, you know, in this life, we seek our personal glories. And this is a good thing. We want to advance as individuals. Sometimes we seek advancement on the party level. My party, my government. But nation building calls us to think of the collective, the entire nation, and where it is heading. Nation building forces us to ask, what can I contribute to build the nation? Personally, what can I do in my workplace, for example, to build this nation that we have here? And how can I mobilize other people for the task of nation building? Cleve would tell you that when we sit down in the SER and he has his chicken, I have my turkey, we are discussing ways of promoting the university and promoting the campus, promoting the island. And I hope today that we will discuss some ways, and then we have some programs which I'm sure that you might be interested in, and we will discuss them later. In other words, we are thinking about the country, we're thinking about the university, doing something to promote it. Not to bring it down, not to sully its reputation, but to promote it. So in this lecture, I wish to pose two questions. First, why must we elevate Black history for nation building and development? And I will examine about 6 points, so it's going to be a long lecture. And secondly, how can development and nation building be achieved? And I'll make 3 quick points. Let us start with the first section of the talk, why must we celebrate Black history? Firstly, I think that we must celebrate Black history because of the resilience of our people through the years. The resilience of people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know, when I look back at the history, I must admit that the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines have received some hard knocks, but managed to stay the course and to rebound. And I want to go through this history carefully. 1780. Let's go back to 1780. One of the deadliest, not one of the deadliest Atlantic hurricanes, the 1780 hurricane. 500 houses were lost here in St. Vincent. That hurricane killed over 22,000 people in the region. Then a few years later, the 1812 volcanic eruption. 56 persons were killed. Major damage to the sugar industry. That's 1812. Then I go to 1831. This is the Great Hurricane of 1831. This was even stronger. 92 of the 96 estates destroyed. 92 of 96. And the worst affected areas were St. David and Charlottes. Slave huts were destroyed. And there was a fall of exports by 50%. 300 people died in that 1831 Great Hurricane, according to S.D. Smith. Fast forward a little bit, 1898 hurricane. 225 people dead. 20,000 houses destroyed. I want you to imagine that. Can you imagine 20,000 houses ripped apart? Where does people going to find shelter? In terms of the value of, or the estimated loss in terms of pounds, 225,000 pounds in damage. Now that's 1898. Go to 1902 and 1903. You have a major eruption. 1,565 people dead. Again, damage to the sugar industry. Losses put at 78,000 pounds. And then we go to 1955, Hurricane Janet. 122 people dead. We lost in Barbados 32 people. And most of those persons who were killed died when Wesleyan Church collapsed. 1979 volcanic eruption, no deaths, but 20,000 people had to be evacuated. The next year, Hurricane Allen, the damage estimated there was 16.3 million US. 1986, Tropical Storm Danielle, estimated damage 9.2 million US. 2002, Hurricane Lily, anybody remember that? Hurricane Lily? Damage 14.8 million US. Hurricane Ivan 2004, you remember that though? But why not Lily? Damage estimated 40 million. 2010, Thomas, 48 million in damage. 2011, 16 flood events, estimated damage 31 million US. Then in 2013, a Christmas trough, damage 86 million US. Then November floods of 2016, damage 29.7 million US. 2021, volcanic eruption, estimated damage, and these are estimates from the rapid response team. It could be higher. 275 million US. Now Hurricane Beryl, estimated damage 230.6 million US, or 22% of the GDP. Now that is what you call licks and hard knocks. But yet you all have rebounded. That is resilience. And we must celebrate that resilience. We must talk about it. As a matter of fact, it is a story that we can tell. It is a story that our tour guides can tell. When they have visitors and tourists, a story of resilience, that you have the ability to recover against all the odds. And it shows what the people of St. Vincent, when they put their minds together, what they can achieve. So all of these incidents here, all of these hurricanes here, in my view, and I hope we have tour guides in here and tour operators in here, can be repackaged and told as stories. The story of the volcanic eruption. And I'm sure inside of each of those stories, there are personal stories that people can tell. And I hope that we can interview people, persons who lived through Hurricane Jeanette, lived through Hurricane Allen and Hurricane Lily, so that we can get the inside scoop as we go forward. In other words, we are using all of these bad events, what we call dark history, to propel our heritage economy. I now want to move to the second point. We must elevate Black history because the Caribbean is known for global sporting excellence. The region has produced Sobers, Richards, Lara, Bolt, Shelley and Fraser Price, to name a few. But in St. Vincent, we have a lot of sporting excellence that we have not quite identified. Charles Oliver was the first Black cricketer to play for an English county. First Black man who played for the West Indies. And he played for Derbyshire. Now, he played for the West Indies between 1900 and 1907. That's before the West Indies was a test playing team. But he also played county cricket. He was born in 1876 and died in 1949. We have to promote him. We have to research his life and do biographies. First Black man, he was there in the county circuit before Richards and Greenwich and all of these people. But sometimes we miss these people. And that's why history comes in and brings these people out of the trash, so to speak, out of the dirt, so to speak, out of all of these things that try to keep them down, and elevate them and promote them. And now we also have Alfonso Roberts. Now, Alfonso Roberts was the first cricketer from the Windwards to represent the West Indies. Not Mike Finley, we'll get to Finley later. But Roberts played one test in 1956 against New Zealand. But that is an achievement, especially in 1956, when the captain of the West Indies team was white. That is an achievement, to have one test player in the side. And then we come to Mike Finley, second player in the West Indies, in the Windwards, to represent the West Indies between 1969 and 1973. He played 10 tests and later rose to the position of manager of the West Indies side and chief selector. Is he still alive? He's still alive. Winston Davis, West Indies pacer, who played in the heyday of the four-prong pace attack. And his bowling in 1983 is still remembered. 7 for 51 versus Australia at Headingley. Destroyed Australia. And we come to the women. Juliana Nero, a right-hand batter, played 76 ODIs. That's a lot of ODIs to play. 76. 45 T20s for the West Indies between 2003 to 2014. Let's give her a round of applause. Neil Williams played one test for England, and he got 2 wickets for 149 runs. Now, you will say that was expensive. But you know who he got? He got Sachin Tendulkar and Mohammad Azharuddin, 2 great Indian players. But he represented Middlesex in the county championship, and he was able to raise the trophy for Middlesex in 1982, 1985, 1990, and 1992. Neil Williams. Will Slack, excellent first-class cricketer for Middlesex, with over 13,000 runs, played 3 tests for England. He is now deceased. Dighton Butler, left-hand fast bowler, with 5 ODIs, 1 T20 between 2001 and 2010. And it is my view, therefore, that we ought to bargain, we ought to agitate in St. Vincent to ensure that we get a test or a one-day international or a T20 every single year. I know there was some, discussion about this, that the Australians are coming and we don't have a test or a game at Arnottsville. This is an opportunity to say, look, let us do all in our power to get at least one match, anytime a team comes here. And then we have basketball. Talk about excellence, huh? And sometimes we don't see it, we don't promote it. A Donald Foyle, professional basketballer, a center, Golden State Warriors, played 10 seasons for Golden State Warriors, 2 seasons for Orlando Magic, 1 season for Memphis Grizzlies. And I'm told that he has a net worth of 20 million. Dario Glasgow played for Central Florida University, 2019-20. Consolo Adams for the District of Columbia University. Opam Bramble played for New York Tech, 2019-20. And the list goes on. And then I break to welcome our Prime Minister. Welcome. And then, in addition to these basketballers, we have Olympians. Just last year, we were glued to the television to watch Shafiqua Maloney, the first Vincentian native to compete in an Olympic final, finishing 4th in 2024. And I was so pleased when I came in through Argyle to see her photograph at Argyle. And Handel Roban, 5th in the 800 semi-final heats in 2004. Give him a round of applause. Kenneth Green, 3rd in the 50-meter freestyle in Heat 5 preliminaries. Give him a round of applause. Alex Joachim did not advance, but set a national record in the 50-meter freestyle 2024. And all of these are sports persons. But then we also have performers. I want to salute Judy Boucher, reggae and R&B singer, with her international hits single, Can't Be With You Tonight, which reached number 2 in the UK. And I hope that before we go, somebody with the computer could put it on and just play 30 seconds of it. Can't Be With You Tonight. It is still a hit in Barbados. People still play it on the dance hall. You still play it as well? And dance to it? It is and more. A wonderful hit. The point that I want to make here is that we have a sporting a legacy of sporting excellence that should inspire and will inspire athletes, footballers, basketballers, cricketers, swimmers to adopt sport with a view of participating in the global leagues. And I want to repeat that. When we highlight and salute these people, our young generation can now see that it is possible to participate in the global arena and to move beyond St. Vincent. For cricketers to play in the leagues and make money. So I think it is important, therefore, to salute this global excellence in the Caribbean and here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thirdly, we must note and celebrate the social and economic progress of the country, particularly after independence. But even before independence, with universal adult suffrage in 1951, which allowed individuals, irrespective of class, to participate in elections, sometimes we fail to understand the significance of universal adult suffrage. And we must note to our children and grandchildren that there was a struggle for it, that there was a time you had to meet all the property and income qualifications, and that limited participation. And I say that because there is a view today being spread among young people who claim, well, I don't need to vote. In other words, they dismiss voting. When our foreparents worked hard throughout the Caribbean to get the vote. I believe that nation building and development is about going out and exercising that important right whenever elections are called, regardless of how you feel about politicians, regardless of how you feel about government. Go out and elect and exercise that important right. That will strengthen our democracy, that will strengthen our nation building program. Another important socio-economic advancement here in St. Vincent and Grenadines was, of course, independence. Again, we in the Caribbean are taking independence for granted because there are people who were born in the post-independence period. So they do not understand fully what people went through in the colonial age. And that is why when independence comes around, I think it is 27th October, people must go out in all their colors and celebrate with passion. The Americans do it. 4th of July is a big thing because you now, or we in the Caribbean, can now run our countries and choose the direction that our countries could go. I visited today as I was driving around the old airport and looking at the runway, you could see why that airport could not accommodate a jet aircraft, because when you get to the end, you're ATC. And when I compare that with what happened at Argyle, February 14th, 2017, that's an important date in our calendar. That's a cause for celebration, Prime Minister. Because what it has done, it has transformed the infrastructure of our country so that we could get direct flights, direct international flights. No longer do we have to go through Barbados or one of the other islands to come here. Direct flights. And that's important, to have direct flights coming. And sometimes, again, we take these things for granted. You know, we have an airport, so what? It is a big thing. It is a big thing to have an international airport. Another socio-economic development is, of course, the Rebecca Bridge over Dry River. And I hope that you will take me there, Cleve, tomorrow. Yeah. If we can get there. Yeah. And I read Prime Minister's story in the making of the Conrad. Actually, I stood up the entire night a couple of nights ago and read the book. And the point here is that this was an impossible project, or it was said to be impossible. And out of that project, there is a story, a heritage story, that includes this guy, Jeffrey Cato, the engineer. And all of these stories are important. When we have tourists, tell them about the story of building that bridge. So I think that when we look at our socio-economic development, there are stories that come out and they tell us that we are making progress and we ought to note that progress, yes? Or count our blessings, as the song says. Name them one by one. Yes, name them, identify them, so that people see where we have come from and what progress we have made. I now come to the UN Security Council. Still on socio-economic development, St. Vincent was the smallest, and the Grenadines, nation to hold a seat at the UN Security Council. And took that seat January 1st, 2020. And served as chair for 1 month. Yes, 1 month, November 2020. Also served as chair of the Economic and Social Council. And this really tells us that size is not a restraining factor. That it is intelligence, it is willpower, it is intellect, it is knowledge that a country so small could be a member of the UN Security Council. Give yourselves a round of applause. And then in 2023, December 14th, anybody can remember what happened in December 14th, 2023? Anybody? Show of hands. If you remember what happened, December 14th, 2023. Yes, what happened? Yes, you remember what happened, December 14th? Yes. Now, that's an important meeting to deal with the problems that were emerging. That's the meeting between, to deal with the issues between Guyana and Venezuela. The mediating role, that is important. The mediating role to mediate and to bring peace. And the Caribbean, in my view, must always be a zone of peace. We had 200 years of war when the Caribbean was the theater for Europe. All the wars took place down here. That's why you have some forts around the place. And I hope that it remains a zone of peace going forward. So it's important, therefore, to reflect on these achievements, because reflection brings pride, reflection brings confidence, and reflection implores us to give thanks. Fourthly, and we're moving quickly, we must celebrate Black history because of the achievements of our Black entrepreneurs. And I want to signal the work of Luke Brown, who's done a lot of work on our Black entrepreneurs, a lot of biographies, and of course, his writing in the Searchlight in various editions around 2000. Is he here today? Oh, this is Luke. Congratulations, good work. Give him a round of applause. And this is what you want, people to write the history and to bring the history out to share with individuals. But he wrote an article in the Searchlight, January 24th, 2014, on Egerton Richards. Anybody remember Egerton Richards? By show of hands? Everybody. Everybody. Born January 10th, 1929, died at the age of 72 in 2001. Businessman, political adventurer, and I like the term that you use, political adventurer, philanthropist, and of course, Luke tells us in his article that he challenged Ivy Joshua for the North Windward seat in 1957 and ran 3 times against Milton Cato between 1961 and 1967. But he also reminds us of Mr. Richards' early beginnings. He started in teaching, moved to tailoring, became a policeman, mechanic, sugar factory employee at Mount Bentinck. You see all of these? Teaching, tailoring, policeman, mechanic. And you know what that tells us? That this man was competent in a lot of things. Not just one area of occupation, but all these things. He became a farmer, producing milk and pork and poultry, made animal feed from waste products from his farm, wanted to can mangoes because he realized the mangoes were dropping down and being wasted, wanted to produce flour from breadfruit, transported bananas to St. Lucia for onward shipping to the UK in his boats, and of course gave to charitable causes. But what really impressed me about the article and Mr. Richards was that he established the first indigenous insurance company in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Metro St. General Insurance Company, December 31st, 1968. Now that's critical. To establish those indigenous banks and insurance companies is not a hard thing to do. And Mr. Richards was able to do that, stemming the flow of capital going out, and also writing a booklet called The Principles of Insurance and the Agony of Success. And then another major enterprise of Mr. Richards was to rescue the Vincentian from collapse in 1982. And of course, he was buying a white-owned paper and of course showing the previous owners that he could run such an entity. He must be saluted, and I hope that even more research can be done, Luke, even a full-length book on him to really show that in this country there are persons who work hard and set high standards, and those standards can be followed by our youth. Give Mr. Richards an applause. I also need to salute our boat builders, especially the boat builders in Bequia. The Sargent Brothers Model Boat Shop, founded in 1966, building model boats. And of course, when the Queen came in 1985, Lawson Sargent presented her with a model boat of the Royal Yacht Britannia. And I'm told that that boat might still be in Buckingham Palace today. Now that is an achievement, to build model boats. And of course, Betway is known for its boating tradition. I also want to salute O.T. Mears, Omroy Theophilus Mears. And of course, this came from another of your articles. You should be doing this lecture. Mears was born in 1945, died in 2022. Born into poverty. Lived in a house with thatch roof. Did not attend secondary school, but attended, as he said, the School of Wisdom. An apprentice furniture maker, working for $7.60. That was his first paycheck. Made chairs to be sold in retail stores in 1962. Hired full-time workers from 1979. And of course, as you know, opened his own retail store, finishing and furnishing, operating that from October 10th, 1983. And the thing about this company is that there's succession planning, so that his sons, I'm told by our honorable esteemed writer, now are in charge of the company. Again, these are stories that inspire. These are stories that inspire our entrepreneurs, our young men who are now looking on, and I hope that we publish and republish what you wrote, Luke, in the Searchlight, so that our schools can see it. Yes, our schools, our community colleges, all of these stories need to be told so that our boys and girls can be impressed. And fifthly, we must elevate Black history to advance the cause of reparatory justice. In my view, Black history will strengthen the case for reparations. It will allow us to repair the damage done by finding our graves. In other words, finding the graves of enslaved people. Have we found any yet, Cleve? Any graves have we found? We found graves? And we have these names as well? Not, and that's important, to find the graves, because in my country, we've only found 1 or 2 graves. All the other graves have been covered up, replanted, houses on them. But for me, repairing those injustices is about finding where our ancestors lived and finding where they died. The planters and the merchants, we know where they died because their names are in the parish churches, right? And throughout the church. There's no mistaking about that. But the enslaved people were just treated like animals, placed down in the ground, and that's it. No marker, no name, nothing. For me, reparatory justice also includes finding these people and finding their names. In other words, don't tell me about the slaves did this. I want to know who were the slaves, their ages, their occupations. What we've done at Cave is we have a little monument to an enslaved man called Qua. And next to that monument, we have done some research to find who lived on the Cave Hill space. So we know, for example, that a woman called Clarissa lived there, and she was 77, the oldest woman on that property. So that is something that I think we ought to look into. How do we find the names of the enslaved people? Those enslaved boilers, those enslaved rum distillers, those coachmen, etc. Black history will also influence more people to join the fight for reparatory justice. We are in for a long fight. We're not going to get reparations tomorrow. It looks like a long fight. But what we want is a groundswell of opinion from below. We want people to join in the cause. But if they don't understand that history of native genocide, that history of slavery, they're not going to join in. So we have a big task of influencing people to join in that struggle. Sixthly, we must elevate Black history, especially now in an age of what I call recolonization. I believe this is the age we are seeing movements towards recolonization. Now, if we were to be talking about that 20 years ago, people would say that we're mad. Recolonize? No, we are past that. But sometimes history has a way of repeating itself. And recolonization came in the 17th century, and it brought slavery. Yes. And oppression. And we must always recognize that things could come back. And we must be on guard. So when people say, well, history is the past, history gone, has no bearing on the society now, no. Just look around and see what's happening. And that is why Black history must be elevated so that we be vigilant and be on the lookout for any recolonization of the region. I now go to my second, I'm getting to the end, my second area. How do we elevate Black history? And this is where you come in, because this is an exercise where we can all participate at the end of the lecture, and you give me your views, and we have a discussion. So I will leave a few minutes for questions and answers. And I want to make 3 quick points here. How do we elevate Black history? First of all, I think we must create a storehouse of Black history. What do I mean by a storehouse of Black history? We must produce Black history, produce it. We must teach it in our schools. And we must honor the contribution of individuals who've made a significant accomplishment. Let's talk about producing Black history. If we don't write, then we cannot carry forward our country. If Mr. Luke here did not write, we would never know about O.T. Mayers and Richards, except if you heard it from your grandparent. Writing is important. And that is why I want to recommend, in addition to the 3-volume work that Dr. Scott and his colleagues are working on, that we consider or explore the possibility of a national biography. What do I mean by a national biography? In other words, we write an 800 word essay, just say 100 words, on prominent individuals throughout the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, going back to the 17th century and coming up to the 21st century. A national biography. The UK has one. As a matter of fact, there's an Oxford National Biography. And they're very proud about their national biography. Why can't a small country like St. Vincent and the Grenadines that has produced so many good, illustrious persons have a national biography? It is, in my view, a long-term project. I mean, we started one at Cave Hill in 2014. It's not published yet, but it's coming. These things take long because it takes a lot of research to go back and to find people. But I want to suggest that as we go forward in terms of producing national biographies. In addition, it is important that we produce individual memoirs so that civil servants, politicians, we have the Prime Minister's making of the comrade already, up to 2011, and I hope that he will bring it forward to the present. But individual civil servants who've seen a lot, teachers, cultural practitioners, can write your memoirs and get people to edit it and proofread it and organize it. It is important to write down your story going forward. And everybody here has a story. Everybody. But your early education, your development, your children, your family, all of these things can be written and published. Producing Black history. I now come to the radio program. And I want to suggest that one way in which we could continue that tradition is by having a radio program. You could probably call it Today in Vincentian History, or Today in Eastern Caribbean History, pivoting on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so that we can employ researchers to read a program on radio, get some important nuggets just for 3 minutes. Just for 3 minutes. In other words, you're bringing that history from out of the archives into people's homes. Every day you're doing it. This is what we do on a daily basis. Every day on Voice of Barbados, we have two programs, one called Today in Cricket History and the other one called Today in Bajan History. It works too hard, I must admit, but it is what we call national development. And when the program doesn't come, people call the station, want to know what happened. But the program reminds us that there are a lot of things that happened 200 years ago that's still happening. We ran a program the other day, 1838, on copper theft in 1838. People stealing copper in 1838. You know they do the same thing today? In addition to that program, and Cleve Scott is very keen on doing the program, and of course Principal Severin as well. In addition to that, what about TV documentaries? I am sure that anything that is research can be placed in a television documentary. Anything that is research. All you need, it is not difficult, all you need is footage, you need a structure to it, and somebody to talk, or a number of people to talk. That's all you need. And I'm sure that we have hundreds of people across this nation who would like to talk. Yes, and who knows the history. And that really helps to build out the nation. Do you know in America, they have made movies on every single historical event? War of 1812, Civil War, all of those historical events, there's a movie. Why can't we make movies on our national hero, Chatayer? Why can't we make movies on those Bajans who came here to Dorsetshire Hill in 1862-63? Nothing wrong with that. Make movies of our people. And don't let cost be a deterrent. All we need is willing hands, willing minds. But we must also teach black history, not only history, but black history, the experience of black people in our schools. That's a fight that we are struggling with in Barbados. In Barbados, from forms 1 to 3, not all the schools teach history. And we're struggling to have history taught from forms 1 to 3 in all of the schools. Because we believe that if people know about their history, their culture, even the history of their schools, they'll be better citizens and we would curb deviance. In other words, history gets people, in my view, to love their country. Not to hate it, not to disrespect it, but to love it. Because there's a sweet history, there are sweet stories that can be told. The second point I want to make is how can we use black stories to propel heritage tourism here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? We have stories of resistance. We have stories of resilience. Stories of achievement, O.T. Mears and Egerton Richards. How can we transmit those stories to a taxi operator, a tour bus operator, so that as the tour bus goes through the hills up to Fort Charlotte, we are telling stories about our people? You know what that does? That's a niche area that brings back people to the country. Because they get the views, and St. Vincent's a beautiful place, I must admit. I mean, the views are stunning. And you want to come back. I want to come back even though I'm leaving tomorrow. The views are stunning, and I'm told I have not seen it all. Now, that's a selling point for tourism. But when you add the story and get the taxi man to tell it properly and to tell it well, to tell it like a storyteller, not just to make up things. In my country, sometimes taxi men make up things. So training has to be done. A few weeks of training in the down season. Train the taxi man how to produce a story. And let me tell you something. People who come to our shores and hear those stories, they want to come back. Another way in which we can tell stories is by using the physical structures to do so, using the churches. In all of our churches, there is a story. We just got to find it or find them. Tell stories about our tunnels, Black Point Tunnel, our great houses, and our artisans, our black artisans, our sugar boilers. Stories are critical. And finally, I think it is important to be intentional about the development of the black youth. Be intentional about the development. And it blessed my heart today when I saw near the Arnasville cricket ground people playing cricket. And it was even more enthused when I saw, was it the Scouts? Yes, parading through the area. That is where we have to zero in on to ensure that our young people are mentored well, are trained well. We have to give incentives to our churches, youth groups, and our entrepreneurs, so that youth development and training is something that is not left to chance. So many times, sometimes we have individuals just running wild. Young people just running wild. I like the idea of the young person in his uniform playing football on Saturday. The young person in his uniform in the Scouts. In my view, that is what nation building is all about. Getting people from early into productive pursuits. Not allowing them to run wild. So the question is, how can we as churches, as civic bodies, mobilize individuals to get them into something? At the campus at KFL, we started a little project getting at the Bridgetown Library, getting a tutor every Saturday, not tutor, a reader, to read with 50 children from Bridgetown. 50 children. Every Saturday, we would go down from 10:30 to 12, read with 50 children. Just read a story. Because we recognize there's a decline in literacy. And we want to address it head on. Just a story for an hour and a half, and when they're finished, you give them a little drink, some cake, they go home, and they're feeling good. We're not paying the people. It's not a paid thing. It's people volunteering their time, their hour and a half to go down. And that is what nation building is about. Looking at a situation, seeing decline, not just criticizing it on the calling programs that we do here in Barbados, but seeing decline, seeing a problem, and putting your hand up and saying, I will do this, I will go forth. So in our country, therefore, in our region, therefore, we have a lot of talent. But we have to nurture that talent. We have to mentor these people so that, in the old days, when you left school, what happened? You just didn't go on the block. You were an apprentice to a carpenter, a mason. And that apprenticeship system played an important role. So that at 16, 17, 18, you were employed in some vocation. And that is the example that we saw here with O.T. Mears. Apprenticeship. I think we have allowed some of these things to slip by. It's important, therefore, that we double down and be intentional about the development of the black youth, because that can nip this problem that we have throughout the Caribbean, this problem of crime, in the bud. Let us be intentional about black youth and their development. So I want to conclude, therefore, by thanking the Global Campus at this site here in St. Vincent for organizing such a gathering. These gatherings are sessions to raise consciousness about black advancement, because they help us to step back and reflect. What have we done in the last 50 years? They help us to celebrate as well. And they help us to discuss these serious issues of nation building and development. I thank you.
We thank you very much, Dr. Carter, for that thought-provoking presentation, which encouraged us to celebrate Black history more, not only to honor the resilience of our ancestors, but also to utilize Black history as a powerful tool for nation building and development. We heard quite a few issues coming out of the presentation. He mentioned achievements in SVG after independence, the achievement of black businesses, youth development, heritage tourism. So now is an opportunity for us to engage. Dr. Carter, you can, I know that his presentation would have sparked a wealth of thoughts and perhaps some questions. So now is the time to engage him or just to make your contribution to the topic. So the floor is open. You can just indicate if you'd like to make a contribution. And we have the first one. We ask you please to come to the microphone, and if need be, Dr. Carter would respond from here.
How are you doing? Good night to all of you, Prime Minister. Good night. Good to see you. Good night to everybody. Excellency, how are you? Good to see you. I would not be long, but I'd like to hear your view, Dr. Henderson. I met you in Caveville, and it's only when you went there. Cleve had introduced me when I went there for my book, if you recall.
Yes.
Right, the story of Pauline Bramber. Now, this whole question about history and its role is a serious question for me. Very, very serious question. And I'll tell you why, because...
Keep holding it, yeah.
Yes, as a child, as a boy, about 16 years old, I read a book by Dr. Eric Williams. It's called Inward Hunger, The Making of a Prime Minister. And in that book, Eric describes how he went to Oxford, and he had exams there and so on. And the teacher came back, and he had exams in French, Spanish, history, and Latin. And the papers came back, and everything was good. He got straight A's and so on. But then the Latin paper came back. And the teacher came in, and he gave everybody the paper, and he said, "Who here is Eric Williams?" And Eric was the only black person in the class at the time. But every time he said, "Come in. Who did this paper?" He said, "I did." He said, "Well, you know what? You're going to do it. You're going to do it over in front of me." And Eric realized that he had made a mistake, and he corrected the mistake. And the professor looked at him and said, "Where did you learn Latin like that?" He told him, "You should not be in this class. You should be teaching this class." That's what he told Eric, and that's a fact. Now, when I went to university, I knew that I was going to succeed. Not because I was bright, not because I thought I was gifted or anything of the sort. Is that I left here with that history in my head, knowing somebody before me had done it, you know. And so my question really, and just before I tell you my question, I don't know if you have gone to Ghana and gone to the castles, and Mina Castle and so on and so on. I spent a month in Ghana. And the thing I wanted to see was the Almina Castle more than anything else. Everybody say, oh, you have to see this and you have to see this. When I got there, I almost caused a revolution in the place. I thought they were going to call the police to lock me up. Because, believe this or not, this is the place where you go and you see the point of last return, you know? You know who they worship there? All the white people who kept us in slavery. They even have the graves of the governors surrounded with tape and you can't walk on it. Believe you me, there's not a single monument to the thousands of black people who died in that place. And this is Ghana. This is Africa. I got so upset. I cursed everybody. The creator came and he apologized. I got so mad. I said, I am never coming back to this place. So let's come to my question, which is this. All of what you said is true. But I still think we haven't found a way to teach history, to inspire people the way Eric inspired me. We have to find a mechanism to do it. I don't know how to do it, but I'm saying it has to be done. That's my first question. What do you think might be the mechanism? My second question is this. You didn't say much about culture. Now, I think you know that Amilcar Cabral, the father of what we know as Guinea-Bissau, he said that culture more than anything else is what leads to your liberation, you know, from imperialism, from colonialism, and so on. So I'd like to know what your take on history and culture. For example, we could take Pan, right? The steel banners, you know, Winston Spray and so on. And we created that. When I say we, I mean the Caribbean. So those two things, history and our culture, and also how can we teach children in the way Eric inspired me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Yes. All right, you come forward. I'll answer all together. Come forward, come forward, come forward.
Good day. First of all, sir, I enjoy a lecture. Without economic power, we will continue to be, according to Franz Fanon, the wretches of the earth. So for me, the present crop of leaders in the Caribbean do not have no serious interest in black awareness all around the Caribbean today. They're not interested in developing the minds of our young people. Over 50 years ago, we had organizations here in St. Vincent the Grenadines that was deemed as black cultural organization. I was a member of one called OBCA, the Organization for Black Cultural Awareness. There was one called, after there was a breaking up, one called BLAC, Black Liberation Action Committee. We were hounded, we were cursed out, we were called people on the lunatic fringe by the petty bourgeois, which we still have many here in St. Vincent the Grenadines. I want to quickly say that until we make serious connection with the mother country, we are not going to go nowhere. Young people are not interested in reading. They're not interested in our history. For instance, right here in St. Vincent the Grenadines, what we know as emancipation, it's not recognized and celebrated. They know, everybody here know that. Who's from St. Vincent? No importance is given to it. And it hurts people like me. Me, you know, intellectual and all that, but nobody's fool. Nobody can think for me. Now, we have to first go to the root of it. We have to go way back to Mansa Musa. We have to go back to Shaka Zulu. We have to go back to the great kingdoms of Kush and Miro and Axum. We went back there as young fellas who didn't go no secondary school, but we knew the importance. And then we come forward to Kwame Nkrumah, the same Amilcar Cabral, the first speaker, talk about. Kwame Nkrumah, Jerry Rawlins, the same Thomas Sankara in what we call Burkina Faso today. How many of you in here are appreciating what's happening in the Sahara region? Who are more or less recognizing what's happening in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, the great works of Ibrahim Traore? People like me admire these guys. Even in Senegal, they are trying to break away from the European. We need pride and dignity. If you don't have pride and you don't have dignity like me, nobody could supersede the heroes that I have. My heroes look like me first of all, and all others come second. The great Malcolm X, his mother was a Grenadian. Stokely Carmichael was a born Trinidadian. Shirley Chisholm has connection with Jamaica. Even Louis Farrakhan, who is the head of the so-called nation of Islam, he has Caribbean roots. Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, those were civil rights leaders. They all had connection to the Caribbean. How many of the young people know about that? Unless you have pride and dignity and believe in yourself, we're not going to go nowhere. A bunch of jokers controlling the Caribbean right now. All of them wants to be little King Tuts and little Stalins in the Caribbean. Sir, and people here, until we get rid of this crop of jokers, we ain't going to go nowhere. People have to have pride. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you're somebody. You have to know your history. Right here in St. Vincent the Grenadines, we had something they call a riot in 1935. Who were the leaders? Market people, as we like to say, Buttermott, Sheriff Lewis, and then George McIntosh came, and he was more educated. And he came and they threw everything on his. McIntosh organized it. So ordinary people don't have the sense and understanding to analyze the position and the condition. And this is what's happening today. The jokers in the Caribbean, like I say again, I reiterate that. A few countries are promoting Emancipation Day. African Liberation Day was a big thing in the 70s for us. Today, all that is gone aside. Until our people seriously grasp the importance of what it is to have pride in yourself and believe that you are as good as anybody, and not all talk, because I feel that way. You know what I used to do when I first got to the United States? I used to walk deliberately in white neighborhoods. I'm from the Caribbean, me and into this nonsense, but you telling me you better than me because you have a different pigment? I used to do it, you know, many times cars pull up, stop me. I say I'm from the Caribbean, you know. And I let them understand one time, we don't support certain nonsense. So don't come and tell me I can't walk in a public area. Friends, people here today, until and unless we get serious and reach out to the young people, put in the curriculum the importance of knowing who your heroes are. Until that happens, we are not going to go nowhere. People could talk and talk and talk and talk and mama guide itself. Nothing is going to happen. The crop that we have today leading the Caribbean, they have to go. I'm talking generally. Look, let me just say this. What do we produce? What do we manufacture? That is why I love the guys in Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. They say, listen, all our natural resources, we're going to take it, we are going to refine it, we're going to add value to it, and all the people in Europe who want it, you have to buy it in that sense. You're not going to take our raw material and take it to your country. Play up with it, mix it up, make it what you want, send it back to us and sell us for double the price. Right here in St. Vincent the Grenadines, that crap is happening. And folks, all they could mama guy all this up, but I'll continue to say, black people have to respect themselves. And until you respect yourself, people are going to kick you like football all over the place. Nobody a mama guy in me. The curriculum in schools have to be changed, and black people must understand what we did, not before. Not before that happened are we going to see any changes. Folks, you could talk and say what you want to say. Until the young fellas on the corner is encouraged to get newspaper. I just buy newspaper and drop it by the corner by the boys. I know what to do in the corner, but I say, I have extra paper, hold that, to encourage them to read something and understand what's going on. Don't mama guide the people in this country. And when we go outside, if I go on the radio and say anything, they're going to call me hater. That's what it does. When you talk about your blackness, you hate white people. No, we have to stand up for our rights and freedom. Good day.
Thank you, thank you. I will respond after.
Okay. Hello again, Dr. Carter.
Good. Yeah.
Now, as a student of yours, you were always a good lecturer in terms of challenging us to think outside of the status quo. So being a good student, even though I've graduated, I had to come to challenge you tonight. So listening to your lecture, your presentation, one of the things that I didn't hear enough of was the beginning of the inception of Vincentian culture and our indigenous identity as part of Black history. And I was looking for more references to our indigenous culture and history. And as you know, when I first entered your classes and I said, I am Garifuna, you would challenge me of who or what is Garifuna. So coming with that thought process today and going back to your question on whether or not there were mass graves, and the answer was, not really, we haven't found them. One would argue that one of the largest mass graves in the Caribbean is the island of Baliso. In 1795, March 14, 1795, approximately 5,000 Garifuna people were exiled and approximately half of them died on that island. The island is still privately owned. Our people are scattered, of course, in Honduras, Belize, Guatemala, Nicaragua. However, my question to you, having been in your classes, went on the tours, especially with reference to Newton Burial Ground, and the burial ground next to the boatyard that is currently a parking lot in Barbados. What models would you develop where we could collaboratively advocate for reparations for those spaces, knowing that Barbados is a bit ahead of us in terms of ensuring that their sacred spaces are protected?
Good question.
Yeah.
I'll address it later.
I would say good night, but in the true Garifuna part of me, I would say beauty good noon. First of all, I must say that this is not a question, but I'm speaking as a youth. I think the youngest youth in here as well. This just shows how short I am. So from my understanding, some persons are saying that the young people don't appreciate our culture, especially our Vincentian culture. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But the question we should all ponder on, and I'll give you a few seconds to ponder on it as well. What is being put forward to make our youth appreciate our indigenous culture and our culture on a whole? Now, in October, the Caribbean Development Bank would have hosted a dialogue on transforming education. I had the grand opportunity of being the only Vincentian youth delegate to represent St. Vincent's and also the Caribbean. Imagine a little girl from St. Vincent speaking on indigenous education. Just imagine that. And I would say, until we put our Garifuna and Kalinago history in the schools, our youth will never learn to appreciate our culture, preserve it, and all other things you may think of. Now, it's not every day you get to see a prime minister or the deputy speaker or even talk to such a gentleman like you. So I would go back to my speech from Cayman, and I would end with this. Education is not just about learning math or science. It's about shaping identity, fostering belonging, and empowering students to understand their history, culture, and the world around them. Now, you did say something similar to that in your speech. When students learn about the history of the Caribbean, the focus is often on colonial encounters. Beginning with Christopher Columbus, European colonization, slavery, and post-independence struggles. However, including indigenous history is not about filling in the historical gaps. It's about recognizing that these communities contributed significantly to the shaping of the Caribbean's cultural, social, and economic fabric. Their cultures and traditions have left an inedible mark on the region. And I know we can all agree. Yet, for far too long, their stories have been marginalized, if not entirely erased, from the official histories taught in our schools. The absence of indigenous history in many Caribbean and OECS curriculums is not simply an oversight. It's a symptom of a larger issue. And that larger issue is the legacy of colonialism in our education system. I would end there. You can catch the full speech on my Instagram, Rianka Chance, right? Honorable Prime Minister. Good.
Thank you.
So I'll end there by saying we cannot, as youth, appreciate our culture unless we are taught it properly.
We'll have to charge you for the ad though. All right, so in the interest of time, the young man in the black and white with the glasses in the back would be our last contributor. We would have to wrap up the session, so we would allow Dr. Carter to respond after the gentleman in the black and white. Thank you.
Thank you.
A very pleasant night to everyone in this room tonight. Black History Month, especially to you, Mr. Carter.
Good night to you.
Pleased to meet you here in St. Vincent. A very pleasant night to you, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Gonzalez. A very pleasant night to you also. And to everyone in the room, especially my Rasta brethren and sisterin. You know, as one of the descendants of the 411 slaves on the Codgerton College plantation, which of course we know is the oldest theological seminary in the Western Hemisphere. And as you know, in the book written by you, Mr. Carter, who I have home in my home, of the oldest primary school in 1795.
Yeah, Society.
You know, Society Primary School. As a student of that school, which is defunct now, which is I would say very atrocious in history, because we don't have a Society Primary School now. It is some kind of medical college.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You know, and that is really wrong. You know, so, but as one of those from that theological and that historical, spiritual foreground, I would like to start with a prayer.
Yeah.
You know, glory to Word, glory to Song, and glory to the power of the Most High, Thy Majesty, Hail Selassie I, Rastafari, and Empress Rizora. I hold how good and how pleasant it is for all of us to be here in this love and this unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that ran on the skirts of an dreadlock garment. as the UWI man, and the Jew that ascended upon the mountains of Zion. For here the I and majesty, highly I, Selassie I the first, Rastafari and Empress Zormenin, command this bless upon I and I, even this yes, sir, even life and love forevermore. I give thanks for this Black History Month occasion. And of course, for me to speak of Black History Month, we will have to speak of the greatest person in this dispensation, which is Marcus Messiah Garvey, who said, look to Africa, where a black king will be crowned. And, you know, he said the redemption of us, you know, is near for that. And looking at this story, not his story now, because remember his story is written with his meditation. So we have to talk about our story now, you know. So the greatest event in this dispensation was in 1930, on the 2nd of November, when Haile Selassie I was crowned King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering land of the tribe of Judah, elect of himself, the light of this world, the only high priest after the order of King Melchizedek and the King of Zion, my Majesty Haile Selassie I, Rastafari. And you know, from that occasion, there was a ship builder from Jamaica called Howell, who witnessed that coronation, that great occasion. And remember, he was from Jamaica, and he heard those stories. So to witness that story, that crowning of the greatest king of earth, because remember, they have many kings. We even have King Charles. But you know, there's only one King of Kings, Haile Selassie I first. And you know, that event brought about this movement, which is, of course, the greatest movement from black people since slavery, since 1834, when we supposedly was emancipated, you know, because, you know, it was actually easier when they gave us food, clothes, and shelter before 1834 than now afterwards when they say we are free. Because remember, you're working every day and every month, and you can't fix the situation. So it was easier when the people belongs to the slave master, because he gave you food, clothes, and shelter. But now you have to work for it. You can't even get it. So we must remember that through that occasion that Rastafari came into this Caribbean island in Jamaica in 1930. That was the greatest occasion for us, because the question was asked about culture. You know, culture is the way of life. And you know, Rastafari gave the Caribbean a way of life that in the beginning it was nothing, but now it was everything. I must commend my Prime Minister for the speech that she made at United Nations, at the AU. That's the real truth. When she began with the Battle of Ottawa, and she ended with the victory. But in the middle, she spoke about the division in 1884 of the Berlin Conference. And I must say, and she challenged herself as governments, because remember, she finished by saying she would rather go as a naive, romantic daughter of Africa. And I feel honorable and proud about my Prime Minister with that speech. Because remember, these fields and hills in our anthem beyond, you know, beyond record, are now our very own. And we write our name on history's page with expectations great. Strict guardians of our heritage. And remember, that heritage is Africa, and I like how she claim it, you know. firm craftsmen of our faith.
Yeah, I don't want to stop
and I
you,
like
but
how we are craftsmen and women and how we craft our faith. So I thank you,
Yeah.
and I thank everyone.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone will have a pleasant night.
Thank
and
you so
give
much.
thanks.
Thank you.
One love.
Thank you.
But before I go,
Uh,
I must commend Mr. Gonzalez as one of the greatest prime ministers in the Caribbean for what he have done by taking the Rastafari brethren to Ethiopia and making that government-to-government connection, and for even make sure that the brethren in St. Vincent could go to Ethiopia without having a visa. I feel Mr. Gonzalez should be commended because there's no other prime minister in the Caribbean that has visited Ethiopia with a Rasta delegation. And you know, since that delegation returned, there was not a national, something national for everyone to hear what happened in Ethiopia. I think Mr. Gonzalez should make sure that what happened in Ethiopia should be made known to the people.
Through video.
Yes, not only video,
right,
and through reasoning through the Rastaman them, because I find it hypocritical too.
All right.
When it comes to the honor for what Mr. Gonzalez has done for the Rasta movement. So I would like to publicly commend him for what he has done for the Rastafari movement, not only in St. Vincent, but worldwide. Because from his initial movement in 2005, lots of things have changed. And remember, Barbados have already had an initial flight from Ethiopia to Barbados, which is shorter than from Barbados to New York. And we have plenty of flights to New York. So I think that the government should start to give us, as she said, routes through the sea and routes through the air for the ordinary people like us, especially Rastafari, to return. Because remember, it was the Rastaman that said repatriation and not rehabilitation after the first literary research in 1960 by the university. I thank you very much. Have a pleasant night.
All right. Please keep your comments short or your questions short. So, because we're running out of time, really.
I will not be as long.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll try to be very short.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, now I would thank you for coming to St. Vincent at this time, because I think we are at a critical stage where now we need to take a good look at ourselves and to make plans going forward.
Yes.
Now, on the question of, we're talking history. Now, I want to ask you to use your influence, because we have some documents which were made available to us in the French territory, in France, relating to their stay here during the same time that the British were here. So it would be good to see what the French have said, what their opinions were, to see if it corresponds or differs from what the British said, so that we can have a clearer view of our history going forward. So I'd ask you to use
I will comment on that.
Good. Now, I am impelled to say something here tonight, endeavoring to draw attention to some issues which I consider urgent if we are to be reasonably hopeful that we can repair the malaise in which we now find ourselves in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are distinctly not on the road we thought we had set out on in 1951. And our approaches since 1979 have not been particularly well constructed to ensure the engendering of the socioeconomic strengthening of our people under the umbrella of peace and justice. The readings of the relevant data prompt the conclusion that we have failed. Vincentian families must now recognize that they have a duty to assert themselves, and to the extent of their capacity, each member must do his best to reverse the prevailing circumstances. As our beloved Calypsonian Hyper Constance has reminded us in song, when the family fails, the society will fail. UWI has distinctly featured in the personal development of quite a number of Vincentians over the years. But I am somewhat concerned that they now are having increased global impact, The title UWI Global tells it all. The institution has not been distinctly strong in the area of socio-economic development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For example, when the ECCB came up with a big plan in 2008 to stimulate the economy by injecting significant capital into the sectors of tourism, manufacturing, construction, and fishing, they excluded agriculture. That seemed to be a serious error. And UWI-oriented scholars should have been mature enough to advise. As it turned out, all these sectors which were targeted realized negative growth for 3 successive years after. An explanation is still awaited. Today we are hearing all the politicians promising to be strong in agriculture in the next term. How are the farmers to be re-stimulated after more than 24 years of palpable indifference? Waiting to hear from UWI. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Good night, everybody, and
Good
good night,
night.
Mr. Lecturer. I was very impressed with the lecture, right? And the importance of history is very important. Now, I want to say, one the book I always remember that make me a stance anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist is a book you call Making of the West Indies. That was one of the first book I read twice. And when I don't read that book, it gave me a clear outlook and make me anti-colonialist. But the point I want to make presently, you see the performing art, that is one the drama, poetry, song, dance. That is one of the most powerful tools of reaching with people's mind. And it appeared to me that in the Caribbean, we have a little respect for the performing art. They must understand why the American system is so strong. Because the performing art, they in all farm. They must understand why the Cuban Revolution could sustain itself. Because the importance of the performing art to feel with people's psyche, to feel with people's mind.
Yes, point taken.
And politician is very important to our country. Because in order for us, the house had to have a father, a family, a daddy, a mother. So it's very important, and the democratic process, right? Some people say that the British gave we this, what we say, vote and change government. But that is something evolved through history. And it's one thing I believe in. I rather we vote, shoot one another with the finger. When we're done, we go back to build our country. Because I prefer that you can't have electricity without positive and negative. I just see the people as the copper wire and the positive and negative. When you go to vote, you see yourself as the copper wire and look at the two parties. See which one have a more positive program to develop our country, because the two parties important to the country now. One does be positive, one does be negative. We have to analyze which one carrying the mission, carrying the dreams and desire, because all the parties them supposed to be carrying the dreams and desire for our people, you know, to make we more stronger and healthier. So we must respect one another and agree to disagree and carry forward St. Vincent. Okay, my brother? And we want back serious history in the school, and we want to pay more attention to the medium of the performing art as an instrument to educate the people.
Thank you. Agreed.
Greetings, everyone. I have to really piggyback on everything that was said prior to me being here tonight, well, at the phase that I am. It is so important for us as young people to attend spaces such as this in order for us to have a better understanding of who we are and where we came from. As a student, well, a past student of the Global Campus, and a present student of understanding who I am when it comes to what is this thing called being Vincentian, right? So you dibble-dabbed in some things that are so important and essential in identifying who I am, has been mentioned, when it comes to identifying the our history, not only now, but of the past, and highlighting the unsung heroes of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, as a teacher of history, I just want to acknowledge the fact that in some schools, we think as teachers, as educators, I don't believe that we should sit and wait until things need to be changed in order to be, for us to call for change, because this is why we are placed in the roles of as teachers, to evolve and to not only evolve but to adapt, right? So it's so essential for us as teachers to not only wait on the government to tell us, okay, this is what needs to be done in school when it comes to history. So in the school that I teach currently, we do embark on the importance of local history being placed in our curriculum, right? So it is so important for us to highlight that things are being done, right? But the problem that we have in our small nation is that we feel the need to wait in order for something to be done, when we have the education, we have the knowledge, and we no longer have to wait to come to lecturers like this. The world has become modernized, where history now is not only being told in school, history is being taught through YouTube videos, through podcasts, through the media, right? So we, as a people, we have the knowledge. If we're not a part of the solution, we are definitely part of the problem, and that is what I want.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Final person.
Yes, good night, everyone. Good night, Dr. Carter, and good night, ministers of government. I know I'm the last person, so I'll make mine short. I think history is important, as you've highlighted today in your lecture and in your studies. And I think more importantly, history and what it teaches us and its relevance to today is more important. I think as a Caribbean region, we're at a place where we don't have as much bipartisan participation and as much participation on a global scale as we should. And so my first question to you would be, how does the lessons that we've learned through history, how should it impact our policy and our formation of laws in terms of being an active participant in the global community? You mentioned St. Vincent and our participation in the UN Security Council. But I think as a region, and specifically St. Vincent, we do need to be more participatory in global governance. And then my second question, I also read the book, The Making of the Comrade. And I think it tells an interesting story, not just of our Prime Minister, but of the history of St. Vincent. And my question to you on that account would be, how does the telling of history and the perspective that is given shape our current reality and the futures moving forward? Every story has a twist. And we weren't there. So we weren't able to get that first person perspective. But that story that is told does impact how we view St. Vincent as a country, view our leaders, and view the policies that are made. So that would be the second question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Brother Carter, welcome to St. Vincent.
Thank you.
You did an excellent history, environmental history, a hazard. But what I want to add is, and that brings us to history again, because history is about the past, but the past does bring us to the present, and the present does carry us to the future. We just look at St. Vincent 100 years ago, in the 1920s. St. Vincent in the 1920s, they just laying the base and the basis for the modern motor system, road system. In the 1920s, St. Vincent just had about 18, on both sides, about 15, 18 miles of road. So 100 years ago, the motor transport system, the base and the basis for it was being laid. 100 years ago, because a lot of we are glad with history, you know, because with history you could look at the negative, but there's the positive. What was positive about St. Vincent 100 years ago? They had an increase between 1920 and 1930. They had an increase in the number of schools. Between 1920 and the 1930, they had an increase in the number of students in school. So that even laid the base and the basis for our modern, our literacy program, our literacy. God, I have to wipe out illiteracy. I want to go now and be an internationalist, because the black presence in the Americas is very diversified and varied. When you look at United States, they say 12%, 13%, 14% of the population is African American. Now, 100 years ago, the Ku Klux Klan was marching in Washington. 100 years ago, there was lynching black people, you know. They even passed a bill in Senate to get filibuster against lynching. People must understand that. So history is about progress.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Now, we just can't stay. As I said, the geography of the Afro-American is very wide. 5% of Uruguay is black people, you know. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Just want to say in closing, to answer all of those 9 questions. One, that we must concentrate on building the performing arts. That is something that is necessary. I want to hear Judy Boucher, but time has run out, so we can't hear her, but she's one of our top persons. We have to concentrate on that. Our writers, our poets, our panists, our songsters, they must be given incentives. Secondly, for those persons who ask, how can we teach history? I teach it, this is what I do. I teach it by stories, by videos, by tours. I take my students into the field, out in the community, let them see the sites, and we talk history. In terms of the documents, the French documents, I think that's important. That is part, in my view, of the reparatory process. That is part of reparations. In other words, the documents are our history. I think it is important that both Britain and France repatriate that history and not sell it to us. Right now, if you want the Barbados Agriculture Reporter, we got to go and buy it or pay to use it online. Is it digitized? That's how they make money. But I think we should be asking now, as part of the reparatory process, for that material to be sent back or copied, digitized, sent back, so we can learn from our history and use it. In addition to that, in terms of the Garifuna, good point. I think that's why we need biographies. We need to ensure that our people are not just painted in one brush. Slaves, enslaved, Garifuna, Kalinago. I want to hear about names and people who've done great exploits in our history. The other thing, quickly, in terms of the black curriculum, yes, we need more books. I mean, the book that Dr. Scott is working on, that's a start. Only a start. The more we write, the more stories we tell, the better we will be for our people. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. There's one more thing to be done. Don't move yet. We have some presentations to be made. I want to thank particularly the youth. Some of our students here, I want to thank you for coming out because generally speaking, young people don't come to these things. And I want to thank the youth. I want to thank you for your kind hospitality here in St. Vincent. And I'm praying that this will not be my last, but the other visits to come. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, for stimulating such a fruitful discussion, and to all of you for the comments, the thoughtful comments and questions that you made. I think the level of your engagement really reflects the importance of the topic and its vital role in our society. So we continue now. As you've heard, Dr. Carter is an author, and this evening he will be presenting some books. So first, I invite Prime Minister Gonzalez to receive a book from Dr. Carter. And Prime Minister Gonzalez has a chapter in this book. All right, so we'll move through this segment of presentations very quickly. So the first book is being presented to Prime Minister Gonzalez. Thank you. And now we invite from the St. Vincent and Grenadines Community College, Mr. Ronnie Richardson, who is a lecturer in Caribbean Studies, and he is accepting this book on behalf of the Director Acting, Dr. Karen Thomas. All right, so we witnessed the second presentation there to the Community College. And next we invite Mrs. Michelle King-Campbell, Director of the Libraries, Archives, and Documentation Services, National Public Library, to accept 2 copies there. And finally, to the Global Campus, Sharon will accept on behalf of the Sharon Garway, Marketing Assistant Acting, will accept on behalf of the Global Campus. A true marketing personnel. Okay.
There's a chapter in sentences that say volume and price.
Okay. All right, so we wrap things up now. There's a presentation. There's a presentation to be made by Dr. Noel Barnett, after which we have the vote of thanks, and we call it a night. All right, so this is a token of our appreciation presented to Dr. Carter on behalf of. All right, so quickly I'm going to use my teaching voice. I was a teacher in a former life. So we have a token of appreciation to Dr. Carter, and it contains some of our local banana crafts, as well as some keychain souvenirs from Calvert Jones. So what he has done is curated some photos of our historic sites, tours and tour guiding and so forth. So this is on behalf of the UWI Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
And for those listening online, I don't think they would have heard that. So Dr. Carter is receiving a gift bag of banana craft and other souvenirs. All right, so to wrap things up quickly, Sharon. Oh, nope, sorry. This is a member of staff of the UE as well. Roxanne Chance.
Good night, everyone. As we come to the conclusion of this insightful and enriching lecture, it is my honor to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the UWI Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. First and foremost, a heartfelt thanks to Ms. Sharon Garraway, who led us in prayer. We at the Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, are guided by the Word of God, and the manifestation of this event is a testimony to the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. I extend our deepest gratitude to our esteemed guest lecturer, Dr. Henderson Carter, for your inspiring lecture. Your invaluable insights have significantly contributed to the success of this event and have provided us with much to reflect upon. Dr. Cleve Scott, thank you for paving the way for Dr. Carter's lecture by way of introduction and for the many other ways which you have supported our team in bringing this event to fruition. Thank you to our head of site, Dr. Reza Noel McBarnett, for providing welcome remarks and for her hands-on approach to the event planning and for providing sound leadership throughout the process. To the staff members who assisted, thank you for your tireless efforts and meticulous planning. Your hard work behind the scenes has ensured the smooth execution of this lecture. We are also immensely grateful to Mr. Ezekiel Barrow for coming and supporting our team with protocol duties. To the technical support team, thank you for ensuring that all our sessions ran seamlessly, both in person and virtually, namely Mr. Taj Glasgow and Mr. Jeffrey Balcom. Your expertise and dedication are greatly appreciated. Mr. Donnie Daniel, thank you for your support. We also extend our appreciation to EMS Creations for unique, relevant, and appealing decor. Your generous support has been instrumental in making this event possible and successful. The La Grazia Dance Theatre, Inc. and the Kalunga Theatre Collective for elevating this event with your creative and cultural expressions. A special thanks to our attendees for your active engagement and enthusiasm. Your presence and contributions have enriched the discussions and made this event a collaborative success. I extend gratitude to the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force Traffic Department for ensuring the traffic and parking flowed in decency and good order. Lastly, we offer gratitude to Mrs. Mala Nanton James, Mistress of Ceremonies, for ensuring that this program ran smoothly. In conclusion, thank you all once again for your invaluable contributions and participation. You have made this lecture a memorable and impactful experience. Have a great evening and safe travels home. Thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you very much, Roxanne. And it's just left for me to thank you all very much for coming. We do have a few refreshments which will be served outside of the exit. Do get home safely.